Again with the groin, you've got to be very careful that you don't flare it up, because if you've ever done a groin stretch, quite often they can be quite sore afterwards. And so I think it's very important that you don't push that. You've got to be dictated to by the player or by your patient who will tell you that's far enough, and it mustn't be sore, because again, all you're going to do is just slow down that healing process. So you're going to get the stretching into it as much as you can, and then you're starting to think about load, and how you're going to load that groin and that scar tissue to be as strong as it can, to build the tensile strength, so that eventually it can withstand the loads that you want. Now, the loads in the groin area are quite high, especially in sports like football and rugby, where there's a lot of twisting and turning, and football obviously with kicking as well. You've got to get often you'll find that a lot of football players will have quite weak adductor muscles compared to, say, for example, their abdominal muscles. So that often is why they will get issues around the pelvis, but especially in the groin muscle as well, is because they don't have the same strength on the pull of their pelvis that they're getting from the abdominal. So you have got to work at their strength, and we would look at doing isometrics again, then thinking isotonics, isokinetics, but also thinking eccentrics. And I would do eccentrics fairly early on, very, very low level, no pain, just to get a little bit of load going through that muscle while it's getting longer and longer. And you're doing that at the same time as your stretch. That's the kind of time you're thinking about doing it. And then all you do is just progress and progress and progress. Now, it's a lot harder to do functional strengthening of your groin. Sitting and doing an adductor machine is not going to get you functional in terms of doing, so we tend to use a lot of cable work. And I would tend to use a lot of cables and doing eccentrics and concentrics that way. And the advantage of cables is you can change angles all the time. So you're not just sitting, because hardly anybody plays sports sitting, and that's not gonna get you functionally back. So you've got to think about those kind of things when you're getting into your late stages. And then once you build that up more and more with your cables and we're building the eccentrics up, and we would also then to start to think about sliding boards where you can, the eccentric element is tested even more, where you're sliding the foot out and they've got to control it as much as they can. We do things like side lunges to get the adductors strengthening, and again you're thinking about the eccentric element and the concentric element there. So there's lots of different exercises you can do, but I have to say not many of them are that functional because of the nature of where it is. And that's why the last thing you would ever do is then really explosive cable work, especially if you're going back to a kicking sport, because it's quite important. But obviously when you're running, you can run quite early on with an adductor. So you'll probably find after about 4 days, someone can run without any problems. So they're very different to, every muscle has different things that you can do at different stages. And as I say, with an adductor, I quite often will run people really early on because they don't have any problems with it. But if you bring any kind of cutting movement or turning movement or side movement, that's when they then get